I guess we'll have you. Yes. You're right.
Yeah, it's actually, I think, some of the best political science professors are also very historically they
And it's like this.
Stretching back. You didn't see yourself. Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second student debate held by the Center for American Studies and Research at the American University in Cairo. I'm the director of CASAR, Mark Dietz. And the center was established in 2003 by Prince Al-Walid, the same guy whose name is on this building, in order to foster cultural understanding between the United States and the Middle East. And this series of student debates that we've begun here at AUC is meant to foster debate, which is also something that we try to think about as something that is valued in American culture and American politics. And so to have free and open debate. So last time we had a debate on the question of whether social media was helpful or harmful. And Yumna, who is here in attendance, won that debate. And so anyway, we're holding these debates, and we'll put your name on our website, post your name outside the door of CASAR, and hopefully just also have a good time while you're enjoying your lunch or whatever may be the case. So today's topic is focused on history. I'm a historian, and it's a debate about the artifacts that have been taken out of a lot of African countries and a lot of other places in the world by colonial powers, and then taken back to the colonial metropole in some way, or to an imperial power, okay? Because the Americans are a part of this as well. There are artifacts that I've seen them myself, either in New York or in Philadelphia, that come from Egypt, or that come from some other part of the African continent or the Middle East that have been taken back. And quite often the reason that is given for this is that it's in safekeeping, that Western museums will take better care of these artifacts and preserve them for future generations, because they have the infrastructure, they have the capital, they have the wealth, they have the expertise to be able to do these things. This has come in for a lot of criticism in the last several years, as partly through some of the social movements that have come about from Black Lives Matter and Roads Must Fall, these kinds of things that are also related to public monuments and art. And a lot of people have said, no, this is it's a new era. We can take care of our own artifacts, give them back. So this is the crux of today's debate. And I'm really pleased to see all of you here. So welcome and thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting the mission of CASAR at AUC. And with that introduction, I'd like to also mention my assistant, Yasmin Ghazali, who helps organize all of this stuff. In fact, she pretty much does all the work at CASAR. She's amazing. She's a powerhouse. But before we get started, Yasmin, anything to add?
Not really, just make sure you all register your names on sheet going by, and please stop by at our center up beside TBS. We have the honor board featuring the winners and also the events that we're holding every month. And we'd love to see you all in every single event.
And come in and say hi. Sometimes I'm lonely in my office at CASAR, so by all means, don't hesitate to come in and say hi. And yeah, and Maha's our work study TA in there, so you might find Maha in there as well. But anyway, with that as pretext, let's open the debate.
The people to and people against. Who are the people against?
So would anybody like to open the debate with making a statement in support of one side or the other on this? Yes, please. Please stand up and state your name.
And I think that I'm standing for cultural preservation of these artifacts, because it represents the cultural origins as well as its history and religious identity. So I think that it's very crucial for us to preserve these artifacts and preserve them again.
Your name again? Mohammed?
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. So you're making the argument for bringing the artifacts back to their country of origin, okay? Anybody want to add or to counter? Yes, please. Stand up and state your name.
Hi, my name is Yassine.
Yes, Ian?
Yeah, so there is definitely like positive aspects to bringing it back to the original countries to just show that this is not actually part of the, let's say, the colonial powers culture is actually more part of the original states. But there's a benefit to keeping it in these colonial powers, basically to educate the West or these colonial powers on, let's say, these African countries or these Middle Eastern countries, to educate them on the culture. So in a way, it's actually benefiting these countries without them doing any work. They're just keeping them there, keeping it secured and safe. And at the same time, they're educating the rest of the people on their specific culture. Something that they could add, I guess, if that's like the main change in this topic, is to just basically show, yeah, this is actually from this specific area, not actually claim it as their own. But other than that, yeah, I feel like it might be a positive thing to keep it in the colonial powers areas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Yassine. Yes, how about you in the back? Yes, please stand up and say your name.
Hello, my name is Layan Sam.
Layan?
Sam.
Layan Hussein.
Yes. I agree that people should, in the Western, should learn about these artifacts. However, if they want to learn about it, they can come to the country and learn more about it. And you started the topic with saying that Western can take care of great all the infrastructure and wealth. However, I don't think that any country can take care of its artifacts more than its own country, because it's like a mother with her child.
Thank you. Yes, Mohammed.
Well, as a resolution to this problem,
If you don't, you can turn around, Mohammed, and talk to everybody in the room, please.
as a resolution to this problem, I think that we could provide like mutual access to both sides, so that they both learn and educate, but at the same time maintain the cultural aspects of that artifact.
Okay, thank you. Mutual access. Okay. Yassine, something to add?
Yeah, I was going to say that to counter what you're saying, yeah, you have a point that what better country to preserve it than the original countries. But let's say these original countries are going through coup d'etats or civil wars or political instability, economic crisis. How are they going to take care of it and actually put it to good use if they're already focused on those other issues? Then it's better to keep them in the colonial powers.
Yeah, that could,
Yomna?
okay, Yumna? Don't be intimidated by Yumna just because she won the last one.
Okay, I'm Yumna, and I stand with the fact that we need to return our artifacts back. I want to reply to his point about yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
What was your point? Sorry.
Right now?
Yeah.
Basically, the original countries might go through political instability, other crises, and they wouldn't be able to take care of that as well as the colonial powers.
Let's take the British Museum, right? Okay. The British Museum has over 8 million objects, and it's only able to project or present about quarter of the objects that they have. So they do rotations between objects, right? Okay, now let's take a specific case. The Greek, what are they? The Greek statues, no, the Greek statues in the British Museum are actually aging because of the poor infrastructure. So maybe, just maybe, if they were moved back into Greece, okay, and taken care, wait, hold on. The Greeks, they built a new museum because they offered the British Museum to return back their artifacts. The British Museum did not like that. They did not agree. Because they claimed that Greece doesn't have the ability or the museums that are good enough to preserve such delicate pieces. So Greece built a huge museum, amazing, full of windows, amazing, really. And they asked to take the artifacts back. What's the British Museum's excuse? Again, they just denied it. They don't want. There's no reason for them. Now they have the tools and the museum to have the objects presented. But no, the British Museum just doesn't want to. Okay, fast forward a little bit. If you look at the Greek statues right now, they're actually aging. Why? Because the British Museum faced water leaks and poor ventilation. So when that happened, the delicate artifacts that they're claiming they're preserving actually aged up worse than they would have had if they were moved back to Greece. So even if Greece is facing civil wars, blah, 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 I don't think that's related to the museum. The museum is enclosed. I don't think anyone's going to go in the museum to fight a civil war. And though it is possible, damages do occur, I feel like it is Greeks' responsibility for these damages. Instead of blaming other countries and other museums, like the British Museum, for the, how do I say it, wrong preservance of the artifacts, it would be Greeks' fault on its own artifacts.
Other artifacts in Gaza or in Ukraine being found.
I don't know about artifacts, but wasn't there the oldest church? Yeah.
Okay, Maha, did you want to say something? You had to put your hand up, go ahead.
Anything I'm saying right now is not big, by the way. I'm going for it. I'm gonna reply to what Yumna said. It's very interesting. I didn't know that about the British Museum. I want to ask, like, have you guys been to the British Museum? Have you been? You have? Have you seen like the Japanese collections, like the African history collection, all those? Have you been to Japan? No. Have you been to anywhere other than Egypt and Africa? Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is, like, we mustn't forget that we did in Egypt when Tutankhamun's beard fell off, we glued it back with Amir super glue. But it doesn't look very good for Egypt, and it kind of, when we argue that we can take better care of our artifacts, we definitely can. Another thing is, I like the idea of mutually access to both sides. And I also think that it is important for us to be aware of the history that we do contain and the artifacts that we are neglecting. Because the Islamic Museum of Art, for example, it has things from all over the Islamic world that are not necessarily Egyptian. Should we return those too and then not know anything about
these beautiful boxes that are made in India? And what about the Royal Geographic Society in Egypt that has things that were collected during colonial periods when Egypt and Sudan were one country, and beautiful beaded necklaces, all these things that teach us about countries we have not visited and we might never get a chance to visit because I don't know, maybe that you don't find them popular. So it's kind of, well, what else are you gonna do? Are you actually gonna go out of your way to visit like a country and learn about it? Or should you use what you have access to? And the West, what if you can't afford to travel? What if you cannot afford to go anywhere and you live in London and you want to go to the museum to learn something about culture that you don't know of, and you can't afford to travel to Egypt, for example? I think it's useful.
Leah, did you want to make a response?
I just want to say, people might not get the chance to visit these countries to learn about these artifacts. However, there's this thing nowadays called the internet. You can use to learn about the artifacts. And I believe that each artifact should go back to its own country. And you said a country cannot, might be going through a civil war. I mean, what makes you guarantee that these other countries won't take care of our artifacts? I mean, even though if we're going through civil wars, we can take great care of our artifacts, no matter what the cost is.
Okay, thank you. We'll get a voice in here we haven't heard yet. Yeah, please stand up, state your name.
Sorry.
I'm Ziad.
Ziad.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah,
Can I take both sides? Or is that not
make your own argument, sure.
so I'll side with Yassine on this one in terms of us not being able to take care of our own artifacts. If you look what happened in Syria, again, we saw many videos of ISIS destroying so many artifacts and old temples. That's something we're never going to get again. I think when there are civil wars, if there's anything many people do go and try to rob certain artifacts in Egypt, I believe it was in 2011. The Egyptian Museum was robbed a couple of times. So that was something that did happen. And whether we're going to say if it's a bigger or a much smaller cost, there's still a big cost there. So Africa in general is very politically unstable. So when you say that, why do the West have it, even though they might potentially as well be unstable, it just means that in the Middle East it happens a lot more frequently, and Africa, same thing. So that's the same idea. And I'll go for another argument after this.
Okay. Yeah, help me with your name again?
Layla.
Layla, yeah, please stand up and
Okay. I would like to say that, yes, you do make a point, but then to what extent are these Western countries gonna take? If the pyramids were like something that weren't built from the ground, would they just take it and like put it in the museum? Because we see it in Las Vegas, they literally have like a mini pyramid size. They want to take respectfully to show other cultures, but in the end, this is our culture. People in the age of globalization should come from around or even like search around to see our culture. Egypt is known, I'm taking Egypt for example. Egypt is known for its pyramids, it's known for the Sphinx, it's known for Luxor and the Swan and all that kind of stuff. So when you have these countries that come in and take what a country that's known for, you're almost like ripping apart part of that. You're ripping part of the one tourism in this country because they're like, oh, why would I bother visiting this country when I can either like go to like the Museum of London and see like a miniature version of something. So you are destroying tourism of certain countries that rely on their like historical artifacts as a form of like people coming over. And at the same time, you are like, you're just giving the Westerns, it's another form, it's almost, I can actually argue, it's another form of like semi-colonialization by taking the artifacts. They're like, oh, we might not occupy the country, but we'll take things from you and we'll put it on because quote unquote, under the umbrella that we can store it better. Hello, like this should not be an excuse the Westerners should use that they can store artifacts better than we can. I just don't find that like, that's just really a form of just them making an excuse.
a lot of hands now. This is great. Let's go back to Leah and then come back to Yassine and then back to Yumna and then back to Ziad.
Can I answer it over? you said that the cost would be big, but I mean, we always have an opportunity cost. So if we didn't take the risk in preserving our own history, then we would. And that's what I refer to country, it's our history. And you said the cost is big, but I mean, we can achieve, we can generate this cost back through the travel and tourism industry. If we had our artifacts back, we can generate income to our country, which can help our economy to grow bigger, and people can know more about our country.
Great, thank you. Okay, who did I say first? I think I said Yassine.
So just gonna respond to a couple. So first, when you were talking about the Greek artifacts in the UK, that is a good point. Yeah, that the UK itself isn't probably storing it that much. And you also said that not all of them are on display. So, okay, there could be maybe an agreement between that colonial power and the other like states to just whatever's not on display maybe, or whatever they're not maybe making use of, we could probably give to them. Amen. However, when you're talking about Greece, the main issue is that Greece is more or less a modern, not modern, like more civilized, stable country in Europe. And now we're mainly focusing on, like, let's say the Middle East or Africa, where there's a lot of political instability, economic crisis, civil wars, all that fun stuff. So basically, Greece is not really the best example when we're talking about an issue like this. But I do see your point with the point of preservation. However, in the case of, let's say, African countries or Middle Eastern countries, it probably would be better to keep it in that previous colonial state. And then responding to you, what would actually be better to keep in that previous colonial state would actually, you're actually helping, like, let's say Egypt spread its culture throughout the world without having people come here. You're saying that maybe you're limiting the amount of tourism that might come to Egypt, but no one's going to take the pyramids, no one's going to take the Sphinx. And whoever wants to see the actual pyramids and the actual Sphinx, they're going to come to Egypt. But let's say, I believe that there was a small temple that was given to the US, and it's actually in the Met in New York. That was based on, I think, on a mutual agreement between Egypt and the US. So in that sense, it's not really more of stealing, it's more of mutual agreement. And it's basically educating the people about Egyptian history without having people leave and come to Egypt. So it works in that benefit as well. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I have a lot to reply to. What did I want to start with? Yes, the mutual agreement. I think you both mentioned it, and a few more. I think you, right? You mentioned mutual agreement. Let's take an example of mutual agreement. Again, I'm going to go back to the Greek example. And by the way, I don't feel like we should exclude Greek from the examples. The question does not mention Middle East. It just says, should it be returned to the country of origin? So I feel like I have the right to speak about Greece if I want to. Okay, mutual agreement. What happened, going back to the story that I just told you, is that Greek actually asked the British Museum again to get the artifacts back after they built the museum. And what did the museum do? The British Museum wanted to do. The British Museum wanted to loan, quote unquote, loan the objects, the Greek objects, to Greece, when the opposite should be happening, right? And of course, Greece, rightfully so, disagreed. Why would I loan when I don't recognize you as an owner of my objects? So why would I loan from you an object that is originally mine, right? So they refused. Okay, that's mutual agreement. It just doesn't work. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Okay, yes, in some cases, when the countries are just so wise and rightfully so, or like mutually accepting each other, maybe there would be a case where it's mutual, maybe rotating around. But at the case of it being loaned to its country of origin, it's just ridiculous. You can't really loan something. For example, I owe her pencil, right? I have her pencil right now. I can't just loan it to her back. I actually have to give it back. Me giving it back is me loaning her pencil is me giving her back the pencil, right? Okay, about the learning, or it's making people know more about the culture, explore other cultures, blah, 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 blah. What about our own people? When all of our artifacts are somewhere else, how am I going to educate my own kids? My own nation, my own people? How are they going to know the history, their great history, right? Egypt's history is so wide, right? Like, I'm just going to take Egypt here. Egypt's history is so wide, it's huge. And the fact that more of its history is actually outside of Egypt than in it, it's just ridiculous. The fact that we as Egyptians maybe are required to visit somewhere to watch our own artifacts, it's not ideal. Like, yes, okay, I get it. It's cultural exploration for any other country. But what about me? What about Egypt itself? What about Greek itself? How am I going to teach my kids? If people wanted to learn about such artifacts, just like, I don't know her name, Laila mentioned, they could search it up or they could come to visit the country if they're so interested in reading about another country in the culture. Yeah. Okay. Going back to Ziad's point about the political thing, everything can happen outside of the Middle East. Okay? I could think of it. It can happen anywhere else. It's not just restricted. A terrorist organization might exist somewhere, okay, that is outside of the Middle East. We have this, we're made to think that the Middle East is the cause of the problem. So we're made to think that it's politically charged. We're made to think that it includes terrorist organizations that just wouldn't happen outside, right? When they do. I'm just gonna mention something political. We don't have control over our media. That's why it's projected that we have huge terrorists and whatnot, and everyone thinks that Middle East is just horrible and wars are happening everywhere. But outside, they have great control over their own media. Look at the Israeli situation. They have great control over the media. They're just not showing you what they do. So maybe right now, the Middle East is not as stable as the rest, but we will never guarantee that the rest will stay stable, right? Okay. I think I mentioned it all.
Okay. All right, yes, Ziad.
I'll reply to this part just for now.
Okay,
More stability, I mean, we have to think logically. I mean, the probability of something like ISIS happening anywhere in Europe is very low, very, very low. And also logically speaking, I mean, we're in a very tough situation because there is terrorism in the Middle East. We are not united as a Middle East, as in Arabs, and we do have our issues. So we do have to consider the fact that the West is simply, again, I'll just try to stick to this topic, it's just better with certain things than we are. And so we just have to sort of swallow our pride and try to develop in our own ways. So that's just one thing I'll say. And the part of opportunity cost, which is that once an artifact is destroyed, it's destroyed. It's never coming back. That's gone forever. So if that is a risk we are actually willing to take, I mean, I wouldn't want to take that risk, but if it's gone forever, they don't have it, we don't have it anymore. And in regards to our grandchildren or whoever it is learning about us or our grandparents, it's just never going to happen either. So it's either gone or we just don't have it. So it's just an argument to consider as well when thinking about this.
thank you. Yeah, the Taliban destroyed that one Buddhist. Very, very good one.
I want some hands up.
Oh, yeah, please, go ahead.
I just wanted to add another very important information, in addition to artifacts and all that, and there's, the whole idea of terrorism and stuff like that. I don't want to get deep into the topic because it's not exactly what we're focusing on. But again, the idea of artifact, and when you find them outside, the artifacts that when I'm in Boston or I'm in London, whatever you see is so disproportionate to what is actually in the country itself. Despite the idea that cultural artifacts, sure, you're great, and you get a tiny little glimpse, a very disproportionate size of what you actually see from the country. So what is the point? Is the point maybe to be I remember you mentioned people are interested to they want to know little a itsy bitsy kind of what is about this country that I want to see. But then again, you have Google. You literally have Google can give you everything that you saw in that museum, which is a nice hallway of mummies and whatever, again bringing back Egypt, and plus more. You have the pyramids, you have all that kind of stuff. So the idea is, if people are truly interested, and people in general, if somebody is interested in ancient Egyptian history, they are not going to go to the London Museum and find out, I want to know about Egyptian history. If they have the money and they have the means, they will come to Egypt because they know when I go to Luxor and I see the Karnak temple, and that's the stuff they want to see. They don't want to see the hieroglyphics or whatever. Sure, that's important, but they want to see that in the country. When they go to India, they don't want to see the things they find in the museum of natural history in London. They want to see the Taj Mahal. They want to see it in real life. So why is it that there's stuff like that is already there? Is it to boost a tiny bit of tourism? I would argue not really, because the country is there. It's not like the country completely disintegrated and like that's the only remnants we have of the country. No, it's there. But because of globalization and because of colonialization that has happened, these countries took an opportunity. They're like, I mean, I saw this, unfortunately, I have to bring in a meme in here. So I saw a country in here. I saw a TikTok one time. It's like, I finally found the like lost and found of the world countries. And it was the London Museum, because that's literally like where all the countries like stuff were from. Because in the end, it's like a lot of the times people are talking like as Yumna and Yassine, you talked about how it's like memes and they're like sharing a product. But most of the time, that's not usually the case. Most of the time, it's these countries were like, we're gonna take this. And because we're like, when the British took control of India, like the Indians have any right to say what they wanted from their country to get taken? No, they're like, we're gonna take that, that, and that, and we're gonna make you work for us. And their stuff is there. So in reality, it's their right that all of like the stuff from India and the countries that Britain colonized goes back to these countries. It's not like every single artifact you find outside of a country is actually like mutual agreement. That's literally, that's like less than 10% of the case. So.
Well, a number of you had mentioned the internet. We actually have a project that we're working on here at AUC with the virtual lab in the School of Science and Engineering. That they already have developed the technology with AI for you to be able to put on some virtual goggles and basically go inside the pyramids. Okay, and so then there's the question, okay, well, if people have that, will they stop? Is that going to hurt tourism in Egypt? Is that going to stop people from coming to Egypt to see these things? The idea is that it's more like a movie trailer, gives you like a preview and makes you want to go see the real thing. But, who knows where the potential with AI changing these kinds of things could end up. Yes, Yassin.
Yeah. So a couple of things can respond to you two. So first, when you were talking about how basically, if people want to actually see, let's say Egypt as an example, or this Egyptian or African artifacts and monuments, you can just actually go to the country. The issue with that is that the country is in political instability. The country is going through, I don't know, internal tensions. Let's say here there's economic crisis. I think also on like the US embassy, I don't want to say like which specific embassy, but there's an embassy or like it's known, there's a warning, do not come to Egypt, there's potential terrorism and stuff like that. Like that's like there's an actual warning of that happening. So people would be discouraged to go and actually see it because of these specific conflicts. So the option they have to see a glimpse of the culture or the history is to actually go to the museum in their hometown. Or actually, let's say you have a group of people, let's say an Egyptian family, where they're going for the summer, they're going to London, okay? And in London, you have all these different artifacts of, let's say, I don't know, African or Greek monuments or whatever. So because it's like a vacation, yeah, they're going to London, but through going to London, they actually got exposed to these other cultures, these other historical monuments. So that would actually benefit the country without them actually having to go to the country because of potential issues. Not with Greece, because Greece is more like modern and stable, let's say. That's one thing. Another thing, and you also said people could just look at the internet, but people actually like and enjoy museums. The museum has an actual better appeal than actually just looking it up on the internet. And you actually prefer to go and see, this is the actual, I don't know, mummy or the actual statue of whatever, instead of actually just seeing it like a picture online. Another thing, when you were saying how, what about our own children, our own people, how we're supposed to educate them on our artifacts? And you said how like if all artifacts are basically outside in other countries, that's simply not true, because taking Egypt as an example, maybe Egypt might be an outlier or something, but Egypt has, I'd say, more thousands of artifacts. You have multiple museums in Cairo, you have Luxor, you have Aswan, you have the pyramids, you have the Sphinx. You have all these different artifacts spread around the whole country. So how to educate their own people? They either go to these places, Arabic social studies, the curriculum in school, they get taught like the مش عارف, ancient Egyptian history, Hyksos, like literally everything that even in Egypt. And غير كده, they also have the internet to look if they want to educate their own selves. So that's not really an issue. And the final thing, when you're talking about Greece, and yeah, you're right, I was mistaken, it's not specific about African or Middle Eastern countries. So we could apply Greece to the conversation. But because Greece is an outlier in this specific context of I'd argue that most of the states whose artifacts are being taken away or have been taken away a long time ago are the third world, the global south, who've actually been colonized. Greece is now, it's a stable country. It's a more of like a modern, there was like the Greek civilization under the Roman Empire, but it's basically an outlier when it comes to talking about this specific argument. Thank you.
Yes. How about you in the middle here? Please stand up and say your name.
Hi, my name is Shihab, and yes, and I agree with a lot of your points, and I disagree with a lot of your points as well. But if part of the argument saying that the countries like Britain or like one of the other countries taking artifacts from Egypt or like countries with deep history and then taking the artifacts and presenting it in their museums to, let's say, improve the awareness of that culture or raising knowledge about specific culture. This can also be done by creating replicas, like exact replicas of the artifacts. I, as someone who's interested, let's say, a different culture, I do not need to see the original artifact in a different location other than its origin. If I'm interested in another culture, I would want to see, let's say, a Mona Lisa in Paris. I wouldn't want to see it in Egypt or in any other country, because I feel like they should have the right to choose how they should present their artifacts, how they should present it, and in that location itself. So it has some sort of relevancy to it. So that could solve the situation where you can raise awareness, and you can solve the situation that they get to choose how to present it, and you should preserve their rights too. So, and it doesn't sound absurd when we say Britain is taking artifacts from the Egyptian museum, from the Egyptian history, for example. But it sounds very absurd when we say Egypt took, I don't know, British artifacts, original British artifacts. I don't think that would ever happen. So, yeah.
Okay. Let me go back to Leah, and then we'll come back to you.
Do you really think that our own children are supposed to learn about their history from books and the internet, and that foreigners who have taken our artifacts should learn about them physically? I mean, no. And I believe you said we're taking a big risk. If we only live once in this life. If we didn't take the risk to protect our own artifacts, whether it was from a political view or an economic view, then who are we as people from our own country? I believe we should take the risk because we only live once, and we should do that.
Thank you.
I mainly want to reply to Yassine.
Okay.
I think he said a few contradictory statements. I'm so sorry. Okay, so just to start, just to give one. Okay, you said that, like Leah said, you said that other people no one wants to search things on the internet about artifacts, right? So Westerns shouldn't have to search things on the internet to know other cultures. But apparently you just said that we as Egyptians have to learn about our own culture, right? So that's like, do the Westerns have, do you prefer Westerns over your own people? It's like, why did we get the... Okay. And the other contradictory statement that you mentioned, okay, we do have lots of museums, okay? But go to the Alexandria Museum, Most of the things there are replicas. Again, like, I don't remember who said it. I think you said replicas, right? Most of the things there are replicas, okay? So why does a country that doesn't own anything related to this show an artifact that it's not theirs, and we get to see a replica, and our children get to learn from replicas. It's not ideal when it comes to teaching generations and generations, and you're investing in nationalism. That's what you're doing. Why do we show things, okay? Not just to provide cultural references, and not just to show our own culture, and not just to, it's not something for show, it's not a movie people watch, right? But why? Because it invests nationalism. You go and you look at certain artifacts, and you're like, yeah, this is us, this is what we did. Like our old generations are so great, right? Like we should also have the power to, and to, and to, and to, and to. But when we go see a replica, we're like, we don't even have the power to get our own thing. You're demotivated, okay? And that comes from a personal experience. I actually went to the Alexandria Museum and I saw the replica, and the guy was explaining about the replica. I'm just like, why am I looking at a replica? Why don't we have the power to get our own things back, right? Going back to his point about the Egyptians taking British monuments or artifacts, okay, what will happen? War. I swear to God, they will not stop, okay, to get their things back. But we're supposed to stand high standards to the situation. We're supposed to just, it's okay. You can have this and you can have that, and you might as well just take the nation itself, right? Like Linda said, it just starts with small pieces, and all of a sudden we don't exist. I think this goes back to Afrocentrism. You guys know that. Like, it's just we're being erased quite literally. Okay, not just because we're represented in a movie as, sorry, Black people, or because we show up to people and they don't, like, when you go outside, do people recognize you as Egyptian? Hardly ever. Like, you might be recognized as American, you might be recognized as European even, you might be recognized as maybe, what's there to recognize, honestly, other than Westerns? We're not recognized. We don't have a presence. And that's the most important thing when it comes to raising leaders of a nation. When we're talking about kids who feel like we're not known, we're nothing, right? Later on, what will these kids do for the nation? Nothing. They'll probably go to work abroad, work for people who are Westerns, and feed them money while the nation here crumbles. Okay. Again, going back to you, I'm sorry. You said something very contradictory again. Okay, economic situation about in Egypt, for example. Okay, yeah, that's a positive for Westerns actually. So think about the dollar. How much you pay for a McDonald's meal and you pay like 230, and that's a big number, right? Okay, but that's like how much? Less than $10 in America. So it's actually beneficial to them. They're saving money. They are saving money. Like you go buy the same sandwich, the same meal in McDonald's in the US, and you're paying suddenly twice as much as you pay here because of the economic situation. Yes, we ourselves, Egyptians, are not benefiting from the economic situation. Don't get me right. Don't get me wrong. But the Americans and the Westerns and people whose money and currency is valuable are actually benefiting. When you come here and you buy I saw, there's this guy on TikTok, and he's buying a whole entire estate in Egypt with way less money than he would have if he bought it in America, right? He's investing in something he is for sure going to gain benefit from, and he's not even Egyptian. I'm not going to go into the country making you sell your own land to other nations and other people. I'm not going to get into that. But what I'm trying to give you guys the point is, we cannot let ourselves be erased, because if we don't stop it here, they're going to end up taking the permits. Not literally, but somehow it's going to be theirs at some point, right? And this nation is not going to exist. People are going to lose love for their country because the country does nothing, straight up, right?
Okay. Okay, over to Maha and then back to Mohammed.
I'm gonna add, you said we don't want to erase like ourselves, right? But what are we doing when we return every cultural artifact back to its homeland? We're erasing colonization. We're erasing history, something that happened. It was negative. It is, but it happened, and that has to be remembered. And I'm not saying remember it by keeping all cultural artifacts. Germany recently returned 22 bronze statues to Benin in Africa, and that's because they were stolen and looted. There's a difference when something is legally owned by a museum or when it is completely stolen, no legal documents to have this. I think this debate needs to have a structure that separates the kind of cultural artifacts that are, wait, I just had a brain for it. I was going somewhere. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So I wanted to talk about how museums are global and intellectual hubs, and the way they work is it's not just one country owns all of their things and that's it. No, like countries, every single museum, even in Egypt, has things from all over the world. Just this January, I went to Saudi for a Islamic arts biennale. They had over 200 museums from around the world sending their artifacts to Saudi, which you can argue does not have a deeply rooted Islamic history, but they're doing that to create a hub for Islamic art, and it was the most beautiful display ever. It was like over 120,000 meters of land. It was a huge event. And it was absolutely outstanding, and it really it shows you the essence of what a museum is. They work together. They all work together. They exchange. They look at, what do you have? What do I have? They're also useful for researchers. If someone is researching Sufism in Uzbekistan, they don't want to take 4 connecting flights to Uzbekistan, they can come to the Islamic Museum of Arts, where they have many artifacts. They have Islamic tiles there. They have different things, and they have the internet. And when this internet thing, it goes both ways, you know, because you can say, well, we can also just search up what we want to see in the British Museum. And they're placing so much value on the few very significant, obviously, like Nefertiti's head or the Rosetta Stone, very, very amazing, important artifacts to do. But what about the millions of things we have here that aren't even discovered yet? What about the 200,000 plus items in the Makhzen, the storage room of the Old Egyptian Museum? And this argument that you made about nationalism will not come from the Egyptian population through returning our artifacts. That's not how it works. Right now, we don't even value what we do have. Artifacts don't give us more nationalism. Nationalism is something else, it's something different. It's an ideology. It's connected to what we feel. It's an imagined community. It's not, the artifacts will not help it. We have to actually feel it first. And then we can actually start bringing things in legally, and kind of this is such a big opportunity for Egypt to actually, as an example, work with big museums. What if we did actually have like an exchange with France or Germany, where we bring in Nefertiti for a while, and then everyone, maybe that will open up towards the station, maybe that will do something for it. Why do we have to be the ones that are always suffering from it? Why don't we use things to our advantage, use what we do have?
I actually love that Yumna brought nationalism into this. The French scholar Ernest Renan said that the first task for any nation is to decide which part of its history to forget. Because like nationalism requires distinguishing yourself in difference to somebody else, right? Okay, Mohammed, your turn.
I believe that the true essence of repatriating those artifacts is that bringing social justice as well as dignity and respect to those countries of origin, especially those who are suffering from oppression in the past. So I think by that, we could have established collaborative partnerships between different countries, like Ashley said, like relocating the artifacts so that everybody could learn from it. But how to determine like the rightful ownership for that artifact? I think that we got to date back to the past and refer to the academic experts as well as the anthropologists and historians in order to determine whether this artifact really belongs to a certain country or nation or not.
Thank you for giving historians
And
jobs.
that, I believe that there must be international laws published or set for all countries to abide by, so that to prevent any like looting or illegal possession of such artifacts.
Okay, wow, quite a few here. Let's go, Layla, Yumna, you've had the floor for a while. Let's go Layla, Yassine, and then back to Yumna. Bear in mind, we have basically 7 minutes left. So if you could each try to keep it short, I would appreciate it.
I just want to quickly respond to Meha and Muhammad, right? I want to respond quickly. I personally, that sounds like a very good idea, but in order for two countries to do a negotiations, don't you think they should be on equal platter? Like you cannot have a country who does not have its artifacts already start to want to negotiate. I feel like in order for this sharing of like artifacts to go around, each country should have what has been rightfully taken from them. And I'm not saying that the ones like, if we gave the European countries or the Western countries something, that is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about when countries that came and colonized Egypt, India, all the African countries, the artifacts that they took, that deserves to belong with us first before we can start negotiating which artifacts do we want to share. Because right now we are on the lower end. We need to get our stuff first before we can be like, okay, how do we want to play it? Because you're right. Every museum does not just have its own country. That's nonsense. Nobody would come visit it if it's just the only country there. But in order for you to be able to like have this negotiation and for have your artifacts, sharing of artifacts is fine. But the stealing of artifacts and refusing to give it back to its own country, because this also relates back to this whole colonial issue, because you thought colonialism ended in the 20th century. That's arguably not true. There are many different forms of colonialism. And this is literally a form of it. The idea that they still want our artifacts and they still want our history for them and not to give it back to us in this whole issue, which should seem really like non-negotiable. Give it back. Come on, dude. You left the country. Give us the stuff you stole and bye. But no, we want it. We need it. So this whole like colonialism is still, there's a playing factor. So until there's a even playing field, I don't think that negotiations should start until everyone gets what's rightfully been literally stolen from them. Thank you.
Let's see.
Quickly, just to clear myself up, when you talked about the contradictory ideas about the use of the internet, yeah, I said that how come the people abroad they would just go to the museums and see our like different cultures through like physically, but us we resort to the internet. It's not just the internet. I said there's also Arabic social studies curriculum, which I'm pretty sure that most of us study during school. There is the actual artifacts that we do have, which when we're looking at Egypt are probably more than way more than what's actually abroad. I'm not sure of the number, but we have a lot. Like I said, we have lots of Aswan. I'm not going to list it again, but we have more than enough for us to actually go and visit. And on top of that, if there's anything extra that we want to see, there is also the internet. So it's not just simply the internet and that's it. That's enough for us. So that's one thing. Another thing, when we're talking about making states return or give back the artifacts that they stole a long time ago, way back when in history, that's sort of synonymous with saying, okay, so African Americans were slaves in the US. So right now, currently in the 21st century, we should pay reparations to Black Americans. I personally think that this is something that our ancestors way back when did. Why should I be accountable to giving you money for what happened back then? Similar with the Holocaust and the Jews. Why would Germany up until now have to, I don't know if they continue giving like reparations or if they even did give reparations to the Jews, but it's sort of, it's hit. Oh, they did?
They're the biggest supporters.
But yeah, they still do. So there's basically, we should sort of move on from this, oh, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. We should let go. We should not forget. And building on what she said, we should use it to our advantage. We should, yeah, it is part of colonial history. And we should use this to our advantage to teach the youth, oh, this is actually what happened. But at the same time, like I said before, the tourists that go to, let's say, London or go to the US or go to wherever that see these different cultures of Asia, of Africa, of the Middle East, you're actually benefiting from just that one visit. So yeah, and final thing you said about the economy, about benefiting the US more than the Egyptian, that's on our hands. That's not their fault. And if someone wants to invest because of the economic distress, that's his right. Because like, yani, we're still in the there's still capitalism. And the fact that there's economic distress in our country is, yani, it's on us. It's not on anyone else.
Okay, Leah, 1 minute, and then Yomna, 1 minute.
Okay, you have a company and your assets were stolen. Are you just gonna let go? It's the same thing here. We can't let go. It's not by the number of what we have here. It's our assets, just like our land. We're supposed to preserve it, not give up because our ancestors did.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Yomna, quickly, we need to wrap it up.
Okay, Yassine, two things. First of all, you mentioned back then when you said the contradictory statements. You said Egypt is an outlier and Greek is an outlier. Okay, so what is an example that we can take here? Right? Okay. Aside from that, Maha, right? Okay. Maha, you mentioned we could take Nefertiti's head again back for a while, quote unquote, for a while. Why? It's our thing, right? If we take it back, it's ours. We choose if we want to present it in another country. Going back to your Saudi Arabian example, okay? I lived in Saudi Arabia. I lived in Saudi Arabia. I know the museum that you're talking about. But again, back to what Layla said, it was a mutual agreement to showcase things. And that was completely different from what's happening now in the British Museum with the Egyptian artifacts or the Indian artifacts or. Okay? Going back to your point, okay, خلاص. Enough.
Okay. Thank you all very much for coming. I hope that you found this fun, interesting, useful in some way to think about these questions. These are important questions. It's not just academic. It's not just a kind of a silly debate at AUC in one day. Like there are questions of power and health and wealth really tied up with these things, especially when we bring in the aspect of nationalism. I hope you found this interesting and useful, and I wish you a great day and a great week. Thank you.
Before you leave, 3 points. First thing is, you all have your names on the sheet, right? Okay. Second thing is, you can pass by right beside TDS, find a big glass door. You'll find all our courses that we offer. I encourage you to look at the minor as well. We have an American Studies minor and a bunch of courses that discuss American Studies in political sense, cultural sense, social sense. That should be interesting for you. And furthermore, there are refreshments outside, so please help us up to the refreshments as well. The winner will be announced within a week via email. Okay, so all the debaters have their email clearly written here.
Thank you.
Yassine Walid or Sharawi?
Thank you for letting me. تعرفيني برضه انا ما اعرفش اجي الكرياتيف ما اعرفش انا حاجه على الواتس عارفاها.
Sam, right? Sorry. I'll just email this. I'll email you all. Sorry, thanks for coming. You're passing. Right now.
Thank you for coming. It was